Chapter 3. There was a knock on her office door. Normally, Holly would have let Irma answer it, but her secretary was out for lunch. Setting aside her notebook, Holly opened the door to find Molson lounging against the wall. "Beautiful," he said by way of greeting. Holly ignored the remark. "What did you find out?" "You're all business," Molson tutted her. He straightened. "Ain't you gonna invite me in?" "No," Holly smiled sweetly. "We can talk right here." "What happens when your secretary comes to the door?" he asked. "Irma knows that I'm trying to investigate further into Bethany Searson's case," explained Holly. "I'm sure she will understand." "Suit yourself," nodded Molson. "I got a question. Why didn't you just talk to Bethany? She'd be the one who'd likely know the most about her case besides the police." "I tried." Holly grew serious. "She's not returning my calls." "You think she blames you." Molson suddenly understood Holly's motivation. "You wonder if she thinks you really did have a part in your near death." "A client should be able to trust their psychiatrist," acknowledged Holly. "I thought we had a good relationship." "You're the kind of person that needs people to like her," Molson extrapolated with a lazy grin. "I am not," frowned Holly as she denied his claim. "Sure you are." He pointed to her office. "I bet that's neat as a pin. You're a classic people pleaser. You have a hard time saying no, especially to people whose opinions matter to you." "Stop trying to psychoanalyze me." Holly did not appreciate him saying these things. She liked a clean office. "I'm the doctor here, not you." "When's the last time you had an argument with a parent?" Molson leaned back against the doorframe, cocking his head to the side as he watched her. "A real out argument." "I am not doing this," declared Holly. "You're the shrink. You know I'm right," he said softly. "I am not a shrink. I'm a psychiatrist." She resisted the urge to fold her arms defensively. He was some gang member who did not know what he was talking about. Holly decided to steer the conversation back on track. "Tell me what you found out about the investigation." "Not all that much," admitted Molson, amused that she had changed the subject. "It's still an open case. The pharmacy recordings were erased, so no one knows who filled the prescriptions. The girl who worked at the pharmacy the night the prescriptions were filled went missing. Cops found her body in a river. No signs of foul play, but her family says she don't swim." "She was murdered." Holly took a deep breath. Never before had any of her cases been like this, where someone was willing to kill to keep a client silent. "Probably," agreed Molson. "Computer records state that Bethany picked up her meds. She says she didn't." "Where's the investigation go from here?" asked Holly. "Nowhere," he grimaced. "No proof of anything. Only Bethany remembering that she'd been told if she didn't take the pills on time, she'd have to go live in a psychiatric ward for the rest of her life." "Who told her that?" questioned Holly. "Would whoever it was be our suspect?" "Her dad told her that," Molson told her. "The cops think he decided to overdose his own kid and have the case solved in a nice little bundle once the paperwork was finished." "Ted Searson is dead," Holly stated flatly. Bethany's father had died in prison of a severe allergic reaction. It had made the front page of the news. "That is just a little too convenient. When we last saw him, he was begging you to save Bethany's life. I believe that he did not want his daughter to die." Molson had seen Ted's reaction to Bethany's near-death condition. He knew Ted had not wanted her to die. The man's tearful plea had been heartfelt, even if he was a weak person. "I have a suspicion of who tried to kill Beth." "Who?" Holly jumped on his remark. "You remember the guy in the office?" he asked her. "Yes, the older man who was Mr. Searson's friend. I don't recall his name," Holly admitted. Everything had happened so fast, and she had mainly been concerned for Bethany's welfare. "You had a theory when we were driving to the hospital." "Yeah, I think he orchestrated the whole thing. Mr. David Ramesly." Molson said the name with some disdain. "Who is he?" she wanted to know. If I recall correctly, you said he had something to do with Bethany's childhood memories?
Beth saw the crime, he noted.
You mean the memories of the boat? Holly pursed her lips as she concentrated on recalling everything that Bethany had said about the boat. She remembered being nearly drowned on the boat, someone telling her to forget everything she'd seen. I believe she said something about a powder.
It was likely a drug drop, responded Molson. The white powder was probably heroin. 2 men were aboard the boat when Bethany accidentally stumbled upon the whole thing. One was her father, who convinced David Ramesly not to drown her that day. After that, Beth was put on medications and given years of counseling to ensure she would never remember the incident. She lived her entire life in a fog of fear because her father and David didn't want her to remember and testify against them.
Then David Ramesly did try to kill her. Holly took in a deep breath. He should be arrested.
There's no proof,
replied Molson. What do you mean there's no proof? Holly demanded indignantly. He has motive. Bethany remembers him attempting to kill her on the boat. There's no reason that he wouldn't try again if her memories are resurfacing.
No proof David smuggled drugs back then.
Molson hated to tell her. He was just as frustrated over the situation. He did not like David and wanted the man to face justice.
Bethany's repressed memories aren't going to stand up in any court. Too many people have been led to believe false memories planted by so-called professionals.
I have never planted false memories in any of my clients, Holly said hotly.
This ain't about you, acknowledged Molson. It's about a perceived impression the jury could have. It won't stand up in court.
Then David Ramesly gets away with what he's done? Asked an incredulous Holly.
He gets away with attempting to kill Bethany, yes.
Molson grimly agreed. He hesitated to say something. There's more. Holly looked at him shrewdly. What is it?
Molson sighed. David might not be able to serve justice for what he did to Bethany. However, we know he ran drugs. We know he has framed his oldest son, Michael, for drug smuggling and money laundering. Drew and I are working on a way to prove it so that David can be convicted and go to prison. I want to clear Michael's name.
Drew? Holly's brow furrowed as she tried to recall the name.
Andrew, my brother the detective?
Molson clarified, sardonically reminding her. She had probably only remembered Drew as Detective Colburn, forgetting his first name. Then I want to help, Holly told him.
Help?
Molson had a laugh.
How are you going to help?
I don't know, she admitted. However, I'm going to try. Bethany should have justice. David needs to go to prison. Otherwise, Bethany will always be afraid that he'll try another attempt on her life.
David is slippery. He's got power and money.
Molson tried to gauge how serious Holly was.
This ain't going to be easy to prove what he's done. Anyone who tries, their life could be in danger.
Then I expect you and Detective Colburn to protect me, replied Holly.
Drew ain't going to let you in on this.
Molson shook his head. He was surprised Drew had allowed the rest of the Ramesly clan in on what was going on. Normally, his brother was a loner. Then again, everyone wanted Michael to be set free.
Besides, he ain't allowed to investigate the case anyways.
What do you mean he's not allowed to investigate the case? Holly questioned. He's a detective?
First, it's now an FBI case, so the police don't handle it no more. Second, conflict of interest.
Molson closely watched for Holly's reaction.
He's the illegitimate son of David Ramesly.
Holly mulled that over a moment before looking at Molson. Does that mean you're David's son as well?
He provided the DNA, shrugged Molson. Nothing else.
Then what is your motive for being involved in the case? Holly wanted to know.
I accidentally gave David the idea to frame Michael, softly admitted Molson. Remember when I told you to roll on them before they roll on you up in that office when Bethany was ill? He took the idea and ran with it, pinning his crime on Michael. Michael's in jail because of what I said.
That doesn't mean you're responsible for David's actions, responded Holly. The professional in Holly knew that he had internalized David's actions as a result of what he had said. She had done much the same when she had found out someone had forged a prescription pad to get more drugs to try to overdose Bethany on. He chose his path. It's not your fault.
Maybe it's not. Yet that don't matter since it still feels like my fault.
Molson ran a hand over his face with a sigh.
I'm gonna figure out how to end this mess and put people where they belong. David in jail and Michael back with his family.
How? Holly wanted to know.
I'm not sure yet,
prevaricated Molson. How? Holly demanded this time. Don't try to lie or evade.
Ain't nobody slip much by you, do they? He grimaced. I got friends who know people who are witnesses, able to testify against David Ramesly. They might just prove he's the one running the drugs, not Michael. Then it would naturally come out that David Ramesly is one laundering the cash through the company, Ramesly Pharmaceuticals.
I'll go with you to talk to these potential witnesses, decided Holly.
Whoa!
Molson put his hands on her arms.
No way! These ain't nice people. They ain't gonna be partial to me talking to them, let alone an outsider. There's a hierarchy involved. I don't even know if they'll let me talk to them.
Holly frowned as she looked up at him. She brushed off his hands as she looked at his tattoos. Are they gang members?
Yeah.
Molson nodded, grimacing as he reluctantly admitted the fact.
They ain't gonna say anything in front of you.
Will you tell me what they tell you? She asked. A slow grin crept across his lips.
That sounds like another favor.
She rolled her eyes and huffed. Fine, another favor. What is Detective Colburn doing in the meanwhile? You said he was not supposed to investigate. That implies he still is.
Smart and beautiful, Molson complimented her. He's going over whatever he can manage to get out of his sources at the FBI and going over all aspects of the case. We got a friend who has sources that might give us more information on a couple different fronts. Nothing concrete yet. Whatever we do find and bring forward, it's got to be solid. Hopefully before Michael's trial starts.
How long until the trial? She wondered.
They want to bump it forward, scowled Molson. The justice system wants to make an example out of Michael. They're already vilifying him in the papers as some rich guy who thinks he can do whatever he wants and get away with it.
Is he? I heard he's a billionaire, Riley commented mildly.
I ain't met him,
he had to admit. Molson did not really know the legitimate children of David Ramesly. It's not like he had been invited to visit for the holidays.
Drew likes him.
Am I to understand that's a high recommendation? Holly raised an eyebrow.
Suppose it is. Drew don't like many people. He really hates anyone tied to our pop.
Molson took a small sense of satisfaction as referring to David as Pop. It was a distinctive insolence on his part.
Probably because Drew has childhood memories of the man before he decided to abandon our family.
He blames his dad for his family dynamic. Holly knew the type from her case files.
He's motivated,
affirmed Molson. As long as he's not going to try to get him convicted at any cost. Holly didn't want the case against David to fall apart on technicalities.
If anything, he's the one being the stickler for following the rules of the law,
admitted Molson.
Drew's insisting that everything be done right. If we can get rock-solid proof, he wants it to stick. David has money and connections. Whatever we put up against him has to be airtight.
I want to know what you find, what Drew finds. Holly unconsciously moved closer to Molson as she insisted on her position. I want to be part of this investigation wherever I can. If you need me to do anything that will help, tell me. Bethany was a client of mine. It's important that I help solve this for her and for myself.
She doesn't blame you, he told Holly.
Excuse me? She frowned at the turn of conversation. What do you mean?
Bethany don't blame you. Drew shared what you told him. He doesn't believe that you wrote those prescriptions. Not after the erased pharmacy video or the death of the pharmacy tech, explained Molson. She knows you weren't involved."
"Yet she's not returned any of my calls," responded Holly. "Why did Bethany stop her therapy?"
"She found her answers," he shrugged. "Beth has also been a bit busy with the investigation as well."
"Is she personally involved in this case?" wondered Holly. "Is that wise?"
"Probably not," admitted Molson. "However, Drew will keep an eye on her. They're tied at the hips anyway."
"They're involved?" Holly said dampeningly. "That is not appropriate. He's investigating a case that she's involved in."
"Unofficially investigating," Molson pointed out. "He's technically not allowed to investigate the case."
"It's still not a good idea," insisted Holly. "She will have a hero complex over him. Bethany is very sheltered. Her maturity level is not high enough to realize that a relationship that started in the throes of danger is less likely to succeed. The bond that they have together is because of David Ramesly. Once the threat of him is removed from their lives, what will they have in common? The adrenaline of the moment will fade."
"He's happy. She's happy."
Molson's hands crept out again to cradle her elbows, his fingers tracing her skin.
"They make a good couple. Plus, he and she have already been discussing their happily ever afters."
Impatiently, Holly pushed his hands away. "It's too quick. Did you just say he was thinking of proposing to her?"
"Drew already did," admitted Molson. "Haven't seen a ring yet, but I'm sure he was serious."
"It's not going to work." Holly grabbed a sweater from the closet and put it on, her mind lingering on his touch. Part of her consciously knew she had put on the sweater as another barrier against the man in front of her. "It's too quick, too impulsive."
"Maybe it will work." Molson folded his arms across his chest. "Who are you to say otherwise? In fact, I call in my payment for my first favor right now."
Holly looked at him nervously, wondering what he would want. She didn't know him that well. It had probably been a foolish bargain that she had entered into, promising him favors. "What do you want?"
"When you see Bethany again, you don't get to disparage her relationship with my brother. You don't get to say it won't work. You don't get to admit your doubts," stated Molson.
"Fine," Holly agreed reluctantly. It was an easy thing to do since Bethany had not returned her calls. Holly was disappointed because she genuinely liked Bethany and wanted to help her. She was also surprised at Molson's request. It showed a remarkable loyalty to his brother, a quality he downplayed.
"Good,"
nodded a satisfied Molson.
"She's willing to see you when you got time."
"What?" Holly was stunned. She had not expected to see Bethany again. "You asked her to see me?"
"I said you had some unresolved questions."
He shrugged like it was not a big deal. He pulled out a slip of paper from his pocket, offering it to Holly.
"This is her new phone number. Beth says she'll talk to you as a friend. I think she's through with the therapy."
Holly took the piece of paper. "Thank you. This means a lot to me." Molson shrugged.
"It's not anything special."
"It is to me." Holly realized she was speaking the truth. She wanted to speak to Bethany again, not just because she was concerned for her welfare as her previous doctor. Holly also wanted to reconnect with Bethany, perhaps this time as simply a friend.
"Ma, I'm home,"
Molson shouted to be heard over the radio. He unloaded a bag of groceries on the table and put a hamper of clean laundry on a chair.
"Ma?"
Sighing, he went to the empty living room, shutting off the radio.
"Ma!"
It was maybe half an hour late. Then again, Margot could get into a lot of trouble in a half hour depending on her mood. Molson grimaced and pulled out his cell phone. Maybe she was still at the neighbor's house.
"Hey, Clemmy, is Ma with you?" he asked.
"Don't you hate Clemmy me?" a stern voice said in his ear. "She threw a shoe at me today."
"Did it hit you?"
Molson rubbed the side of his face.
"I found her pills again. I promise I will make her take him, and she'll be in a better mood tomorrow."
"Missed by a mile. Still scared the stuffing out of me. If she does that one more time, you can find someone else to look after her," Clemmy warned. "I am getting too old for this."
Clemmy, you need the income and Ma needs the care. Molson tried to be practical. It's good for both of you.
I need a raise if you think I'm going to keep putting up with her antics, Clemmy stated firmly. She flooded the bathroom, locked the door, and told me she was swimming at the lake.
Is there damage?
Molson's heart sank. He did not want to pay for a bathroom renovation. What do you think? Groused Clemmy. I have the fan on it and the window open. Hopefully most of it will dry up quick. I know that you're not handy with any tools, so don't think you're doing any work that needs to be done. Looking around the living room, Molson had to agree. His attempts to repair damage done by Margot were pathetic. He was no handyman.
We'll work something out.
More money. That's what we'll work out. Clemmy knew no one else on the block wanted to look after Wacko Margot. She had Molson over the proverbial barrel. He would need to work more hours at the shop, Molson decided tiredly.
Fine. Do you know where she is?
I dropped her off at the house a half-hour ago. If you weren't late, you might know where she was. Clemmy hung up on him. No doubt she didn't want to get involved in searching the neighborhood for Margot if she was missing. If Fielding had not kept him, Molson would have been here on time. The man had grilled him on various cases they had seen during the day. Anywhere he could, he pounced on Molson, putting him down and implying he wasn't fit to continue the program. By the end of the day, Molson had descended into giving Fielding the silent treatment. In return, Fielding had kept him past his shift, giving him a lecture on maturity in the workplace. Molson did not point out the irony.
Ma! He yelled.
There was no answer. Deciding a thorough search of the house was in order, Molson began looking. Sometimes Margot would pretend to play hide and seek, thinking that she was playing with her kids in some distant year in the past. She was a small woman and could easily fold herself up, which meant Molson had to check every cupboard, the oven, cabinets, closets, and under furniture. It was time-consuming. Finally, he found her, not hiding at all, but looking through pictures as she sat on her bed.
Hey, Ma.
Molson sat beside her.
Thought I'd heat us up some soup. You want some?
It would be easier to grind her pills and put them in a bowl of soup than try to get her to swallow them on her own. If she didn't know they were there, he could sneak them into her. Look at these photos. Margaret held out a handful. I was a beautiful bride.
Yeah, Ma, you were.
Molson automatically agreed. It was easier than arguing with her. If she wanted to think that she married David Ramesly, let her think it. It wasn't harming anyone but herself. He flipped through the pictures. She had a yellow sundress on and looked rather pretty in her youth, with a wide smile and sparkling eyes. Those were my friends. Margot pointed at each one. Wilbur, Oscar, Ginger, Audrey, Lorna, Barb. We all had such a great time that night. I think we must have spent at least a couple $100 on drinks.
Where were you?
Molson absently asked as he studied the pictures. Margot had so many pictures, he was not sure he had seen them all. There were stacks of boxes full of them in her closet, let alone in the basement. Atlantic City, Margaret told him. I wanted to go to Vegas, but David had to leave for business the next morning. What David probably meant was that he had to leave for his real family the next morning, Molson thought cynically. The group in the pictures were partying and having a great time. He didn't see any evidence of a wedding.
Ma, why did you throw a shoe at Clemmy?
Who is Clemmy? She asked, confusion swamping her face.
Our neighbor lady, he patiently explained. She said you threw a shoe at her today.
I don't see why I would. Margaret gave him an odd little look. I barely know the woman. Borrow a cup of sugar, and now she thinks I'm tossing shoes at her. She must be a little unbalanced. You should stay away from her.
I will,
Molson said easily. He knew that in a few hours Margaret would not recall this conversation anyways. He didn't know why he made the effort to find out why the shoe was even thrown. It was an exercise in futility. Standing up, he gave her back the photos and kissed her on top of the head.
I'll go make some soup.
That sounds good. "Oh, I was a beautiful bride," she murmured as she looked over the pictures again.
Molson went down to the kitchen, glad she was going to be in a reasonable frame of mind tonight. He would spend the night and get her to the center in the morning. Molson would have to rebalance his budget tomorrow while on one of his breaks. Lately, the money coming in seemed to go out as fast. He had a little in savings and did not want to dip into it. Putting the groceries away, Molson pulled the lockbox of pills out from behind the piece of drywall in the living room. He hoped Margaret would not notice it there. She had a bad habit of playing hide the lockbox with him, and he was tired of it. The prescriptions she had were expensive. Grinding up what she was due to take, he put the powder in a chipped bowl, then returned the box to his hiding spot. Heating soup was fairly easy, so he set the table at the same time, grabbing out a couple of buns and making easy cheese sandwiches. He gave half a bun for Margaret's place. If she wanted more, she could have more, but he needed to be sure she downed those pills first. His phone chirped. Molson pulled the cell out of his pocket. With a smile, he noted it was good news. Sterling's source had come through. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of Unlikely Hero, Book 7 of the Ramesly Brothers series. Please subscribe to the channel and click the little bell. That way you'll always be notified when a new chapter drops each weekend. Have a great day and happy listening!